Okay, before we blame it on the rain, my apologies. Let's get in Israel Tabiowo, who's the chairman, Senate Press Corps, to shed some light on what as this thing is unfolding now. Morning, Israel. Thank you for joining us today. So, what can you tell us about how you learned about this and what is different about this particular guidelines compared to the ones that allow the accreditation that allow journalists to cover in the first instance?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. I actually had been briefed prior to when I received the letter. And while I was briefed by the Director of Information, he actually just gave me, just a very scanty idea into what they would be requiring. And I never had a problem with it at the time. I didn't know that it was going to get this way. You understand? By the time I walked into my office on Monday, I looked at it, I saw a copy of what was presented to us, and I looked at it and it was actually very, 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 very disappointing. I double as the Secretary General of the West African Parliamentary Press Corps presently, and we understand what the guidelines are for admission of journalists to cover Parliament. And so this was clearly a diversion from what the actual practice is. And we also have access to what international guidelines stipulates as regards the accreditation of journalists. And so I was actually taken aback. And, since it was a press release, the information just got out. But however, sometime yesterday, when I got to the office, I was actually summoned by the clerk to the National Assembly, and he apologized actually for this sort of embarrassment which the release of the guidelines caused. And he immediately assured me that they were immediately suspending the guidelines. And he asked me to, come up with something a lot more acceptable, something which is internationally acceptable.
Yeah, but pardon me, Israel, I mean, it wasn't there one. Isn't there one before?
No, there hasn't been any guideline. What we had was that we had a bylaw. The Senate Press Corps has a bylaw with which we regulated the activities of journalists. And nobody tried to consult us to say, okay, we had earlier told them that we've got a bylaw. And we also told them that this bylaw takes care of journalist accreditation, it takes care of regulating the practice of journalism within the National Assembly. And we intimated them on this, but they never thought it right to consult with us. And that's the problem. That's why they run into this problem as well.
Okay, so now you're going to be putting heads together to ensure that, those who are not professionals in the field won't find themselves there in the first place.
Of course, we're going to take very, very, very strong step towards that direction right now, because we're going to be coming up with actual guidelines that we'll present to the National Assembly for consideration and adoption. One
more thing, I mean, there's this school of thought, how conspiracy theories work here. How some think that there might have been arm twisting from some quarters to perhaps prevent journalists from focusing, as they ought to, on the incoming leadership or the way the elections will go on. Any such truth? Have you heard any such speculation?
Well, I would want to consider that as a conspiracy of sort, because right now we haven't been able to establish any such thing. Though I've also got wind of that, but we've not been able to ascertain how true that is. So at the moment, we wouldn't want to say that it's true or it's not true. We're still trying to look at that, because I really don't understand why this should be coming at this time.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Israel.
Thank you very much.
So that's Israel Tabiowo, the chairman of the Senate Press Corps. So that perhaps doesn't that put paid to at least a lot of those speculations out there?